to work in a very detailed and in a very fine manner. So we have a polychromatic color scheme, we have gold and silver shown in here. Here it is yellow, here it is gold, and the background is red as before. But see how detailed all this is, and details of architecture also shown. Now it was assumed because of the smooth surface of palm leaf that this improvement in drawing took place. But if you notice the same sort of improvement you see here as well. And so it is not the carrier that is the reason for the improvement. I think it is the 14th century in itself when the situation must have improved in Patan and in Gujarat. And this is reflected in the paintings. This also is an early 15th century painting. Now at this point I want to tell you that we find that in the 11th and 12th century, Gujarat in any case was Patan, was the Rajdhani or the capital of Gujarat. And Patan was a center of intellectual, philosophical and other sort of crafts. You have Patan patolas, you have paintings, all that being done there. But we have now proof, and in the last few years, Ratan Parimu and myself have been studying these manuscripts, we've been looking at their colophons, and we've come to the conclusion that there were workshops set up in Patan, and these workshops produced paintings. Even though we may have colophons saying that this painting was donated at such and such time in the 15th century, from the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th century. 12th century is when Patan rises high, and then 13th, 14th centuries it continues. That this particular manuscript was donated at a certain provincial place. Now when we look at the colophons, we find that they all have a uniform style. They were probably produced in workshops in Patan, and then they were taken by the devotees to their own place, and there the colophon is written. Now why did we come to that conclusion? The reason for coming to that conclusion is that very often the colophons are written in a different ink and different handwriting from that of the text. So it is possible that the person who decided to donate the text to the Jain Bhandars brought it from Patan and then donated it to their Bhandars. So what we now find is Patan has become an important center of painting as well. It was a center of religious studies, of philosophical studies, of literary studies, but now it is also a center of painting. Now in the 14th century, we find, and this is also substantiated by Ratan Parimu, who has been doing a lot of work at the LD Institute. Now we find how the 14th century, the style changes. Here, as I showed you earlier, around 1370, 1400, the palette was very polychromatic. The design was beautifully incised, and the rendition was very clear and fine. And a little bit was gold or silver was used to highlight the paintings. Now, around 50 years later, this is dated 1404, we begin to see that gold is used considerably. There's only red here, and the figures are done in gold. And the entire drawing is also, you can see, it's deteriorated from here. It's not as fine. And this is where I think the workshop technique comes in, because the main person is very well done, but the attendants are probably executed by apprentices in the workshop. And the drawing is a bit becoming cruder, and there's more ornamentation. But what is important is this importance of gold. And examining these manuscripts, we have discovered that gold was first, gold leaf was laid, and then the colors were put. And then finally, this red is substituted by ultramarine for dazzling effects. All this is gold, and then this is done in red and blue. Also look at the way in which the text is done. The line is very fine, and there's more decoration in the margins. I'm sorry. Now we find foreign influence in Western Indian style. This is from about 1250. We begin to get these foreign-looking figures. You can see how they're different from the ones, the Jain figures. They're not done in such an angular manner, neither do they have this projecting eye. Their carnation skin color is quite different, as is their costume. And these are the Sahis who came to help this monk fight a king who had abducted his sister. And then we begin to find that here you look, these are the sort of border decorations we begin to find circa 1500 in these manuscripts. They become very opulent, the color is blue, the writing is in gold, there are superb border decorations with animals, birds, even people fighting, dueling. Here are soldiers. These are again Persian soldiers of these type. This is the sort of Persian influence, and also these sort of arabesque background that you see shows Persian influence. Here you see Chinese clouds which had come from Persia. So there is a lot of foreign influence, particularly Persian, in these manuscripts. And you also see Mamluk influence from Egypt in these manuscripts. Now here is a Kalpasutra manuscript, circa 1420. And here is a Mamluk painting, almost 80 years earlier. But look at these decorative devices. Look at this and look at this. See how these are taken in from there. Also the idea of a tree leaning in, the clouds in striations over here. So, of course, it's not direct copying. There is a lot of the artist putting his own thing in there. But this is what you're going to see. Even the rocks, I can't show you all the things, but this is also from Mamluk and Persian influence. So we have the Jains, they're probably trading with these countries, and these influences are taken. Also notice this gold background and the color blue. At the same time, you have a lot of the Jain manuscripts, but we have a lot of Western Indian style, Hindu and secular manuscripts. This is from the Balagopala Stuti. This is from Geet Govinda. More or less the same style, the same sort of costumes and decorative treatment. I'm going fast now. And this is the Vasant Vilasa. Now it's very interesting to see this manuscript. It's a cloth scroll with verses written over here and illustrations following them. It is a form of Phagu, which is a poem on springtime done in Falgun, the month of Falgun. And what we see is women in the throes of love and romance, and then you find this is an 11-meter long scroll, and the research done by Nachiket Chanchani, who's a young scholar and who's teaching at the University of Michigan, he has studied this, and he finds that each verse, there is Old Gujarati, followed by 3 or 4 verses of Sanskrit and Prakrit. So the Gujarati verse, which seems to be much terser, is followed by these more elaborate verses in Sanskrit and in Prakrit, which gives the total picture, taken together. So here we have the regional language and the classical language together. Also the manner in which we see these women pining for their lovers or waiting for their lovers introduces the concept of Naika. So you could take her as Vasak Sajja Naika, waiting for her lover. And it is situated in this sort of verdant forest. More than that, what Nachiket has discovered, and here I'm talking of new directions where research is taking place, is he has looked at the performative aspect of this particular scroll. He says this scroll undoubtedly, it was produced for a patron called Sar Chandrabala. And this Sar must have been a vain individual, a person who was a Rasika, who understood many things, who was probably a trader, had enough wealth to appreciate many things. and that he understood the romance in this poem, and probably he saw this scroll together with other friends, and therefore they must have sung the verses, or they may have performed with the verses. They must have had instrumentalists coming there and enjoyed bits of the scroll, because it's 11 meter long, which is almost 33 feet. So he feels that there is a performative aspect to this. So he has examined the linguistics, the sort of way in which certain motifs have come into this from Natya Shastra, and there are erotic scenes also, so he thinks Koka Shastra, all these were studied, and these are the sort of, let's say, the atmosphere or the consciousness of the urban individual in Gujarat. So he's been doing a lot of research which is different from what we all were doing, because we were trying to establish a chronology. Also, I'm talking of Khandalawala, Dr. Moti Chandra, Norman Brown, and later me, doing all this because we were trying to establish a chronology. We were trying to establish the stylistic development. We were trying to see how it went from where to where, and what were the changes that were occurring as the style developed. But at the same time, what happens is that we got caught, particularly Khandalawala and U.P. Shah, got caught in a linear way of thinking. So they would put one thing after another, and because they would say, oh, this eye is projecting further, so it must be later. No, this was not very convincing to a lot of us, because we feel things were going on simultaneously. Certainly there must have been a lot of interaction and people knowing what others were doing, but it was not like today, where people knew everything, and therefore things were going on simultaneously, and little aspects in a style cannot be taken as indicators of its date, whether it's early or late. And so this has become important later on, as we go along, I'll tell you. We also have some of these in Western Indian style in the Sultanate idiom, meaning thereby that we have this Jainesque Shahnama. It is called Jainesque because it is in Jain style, where the Sahi type of figures are shown here. And this is, here we see the king with the queen and her attendants. And here is a fighting scene where you see a devil whose carnation is different and his eye is sticking out, whereas these people are not. So we have during the 15th century certain manuscripts that were being prepared for the sultans or the Muslim elite. Because there is no colophon, we don't know for whom it was prepared. But something like this with beautiful calligraphy, very nice illustrations, very detailed illustrations, also very vibrant and vivacious in their style, must have been done for a royal patron. Here also we have the Lord Chanda, where we see it's again a poem in Arabic. Yes, Urdu poem or something. But see the Western Indian style, how this father eye, this very narrow waist. It's different from the Jain manuscripts, but the style is similar. So there is a certain interchange that is going on. Persian manuscripts, Arabic manuscripts, Egyptian manuscripts must have come, and this interchange is going on. Sorry, I'm going very fast. And finally, we get all these, there are many, many more, but I'll quickly run through them because I think these things are not seen very often and you might enjoy seeing them. This is the Devasano Pardo manuscript, and here the illustrations, unfortunately, are not as well delineated as we see in the earlier manuscripts. But look at these Persian sort of motifs, how they are interwoven in borders. Also here, this wonderful writing in gold, very neat, very precise. And here, dancing figures. I don't know if you can see them over there, but in different postures. And Kapila ji has written a paper on this, and she says it shows that certain from various areas, dance performances were being performed were from the Gujarat people were familiar with it, because when you see these postures, you can identify them as coming from a certain tradition which does not really belong to Gujarat. And here she's done a very detailed sort of analysis where the foot is placed in relation to the other leg, this distance, then this distance, then this sort of thing. So she's really showing again the sort of traveling of dancers, of musicians, of artists that is taking place. And by this time, the style has become so elaborate that you have full page illustrations like this with blue and gold and very dazzling, they're very beautiful to look at. Now this same Indian style, Western, that's why now it is called Western Indian style, but in the 15th century goes to Delhi. Here is a manuscript, it's a Digambar manuscript showing the 14 lucky dreams. It's quite differently formatted than what you see in Western India. I don't have time to show it to you, but this is, and it does not use blue and gold or red and gold or anything like that. Here's another one from Delhi, which shows that the same style was now prevalent in Delhi. Then you see the same style here, and especially please note these soldiers in jamas, because we had thought that jama was a Mughal costume that came in with the Mughals, but here we see that, and it's by 1441 in Gwalior. And here is this manuscript, again a similar one from Gwalior. Now what I wanted to show you here is that the idea that this further projecting eye, you can see, is now almost like just stuck to the face. It's no longer an integral part of the face. And it was the belief of Karl Khandalawala that these are the types of manuscripts that led to the very important Chaul Panchashika style. Now, let me tell you that Chaul Panchashika style is so urbane, it is so sophisticated, that I cannot believe that it would have come from manuscripts like this. I think that these are reflections of a style in the type of Chaul Panchashika style.